Coming up on episode 132 of Creative Writing, I'm talking about data and the GDPR. Ugh.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hello and welcome to Creative Writing. I'm Kirsten Oliphant, your host, and this is the podcast for you, a writer, blogger, or creative who wants to build an online platform without being smarmy. And we are going to talk about all kinds of smarm today as we dive into data and why this has become such a big buzzword that will only continue, just you wait, and GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. I kept having to look this up because I'm always saying GDPR, and I've said it a lot in the last week or two, but I keep forgetting what it stands for. So we're going to dive deep into that, and I have a whole lot of resources for you that are going to be found in the show notes at creativewriting.com/132 for episode 132. So get prepared, and if you think this sounds really boring, well, maybe I'll try to make it interesting. I feel like these topics by themselves do not lend themselves to interest, but I'm going to do my best to make it snappy and make it interesting, or at least fun. I don't know if that's possible. We'll see. You'll have to send me a message later and be like, that was the most fun I've ever had talking about data or listening to data. We'll see. I may fail because, again, data, the word itself is boring, but we're going to start there and then talk about GDPR. And I'm going to share with you a couple of simple tips to start getting your GDPR compliance going and what exactly that means. So if you're like, I don't know what any of this means, hang on, stay with me. I gotcha. Okay, here we go. So you have probably heard a whole lot of talk lately about data. Am I right? With the whole Facebook Cambridge Analytics scandal and all those memes that went around showing how people in Congress apparently do not understand many things about the internet. But really, I think those people are not alone. I was kind of like, I laughed at some of the memes, but then I was like, a lot of us don't understand the significance of data. A lot of us don't understand, even bloggers and people who have websites, what our websites are tracking and doing. So that is why when all this GDPR stuff started coming along out of the EU, because it's a policy there that's going to impact anyone dealing with people in the EU, which is essentially the world. Like if you might have a reader on your blog from the EU, it impacts you. So, we're just going to be hearing about this more and more, but I think people are realizing, hey, I don't know what my site does. And people are asking me questions like, well, I don't collect data. I'm like, well, actually you do. You didn't know it though. And I think that's the thing, is that what is happening right now overall, even though I made the sound at the beginning of the podcast, all of this stuff is good in a way, because it is bringing to light things that are really important. And in fact, there was actually a quote this past year, I believe, and I'll link to it in the show notes, where it was said that right now, the most valuable commodity in the world is data. It's not oil, which is what it used to be, it's data. And I believe that to be true with all of the internet and different things that we have and targeting. The people that are controlling the data have the power. And primarily that's right now Google and Facebook. And we don't really, I think in some ways we're kind of like used to it and we expect it. And then in other ways, we're sort of shocked when we see how it works. So let's talk about exactly why data matters, what we need to know about it, and why this isn't, or why this is something we need to pay attention to not be smarmy. Because honestly, I think bringing all this to light is just being more honest. So it's kind of like, maybe we can compare this to when disclosure started becoming a bigger thing. It's always been a big thing for me, but, I think a lot of people honestly did not know. Some people didn't care, but when you are being paid in product or money for a, post on Instagram or Facebook or on your blog, you have to disclose that. And when I first started blogging, I was offered all kinds of free stuff and I didn't know I had to disclose, and I didn't disclose. And actually I ended up taking my whole Still Hate Pickles blog offline, partially for privacy with my kids, but also because I had a ton of things on my early part of my blog that could have gotten me in trouble, like images that I may have pulled off of Google, because you can't do that, you guys. I didn't know that. I was just blogging for my mom. I didn't really think about those things. And then, people were like, hey, can I send you a bike for your kid if you blog about it? I'm like, sure, that's cool. But I didn't know at first you had to disclose. So a lot of people don't know. Some people don't care, but what's happened is the FTC has started taking notice, and they made regulations about this, but they become bigger and bigger. So I feel like GDPR and all of this data talk that's been going on with Facebook, it's the same kind of shift in understanding and enlightenment and letting people know transparently what is going on. That is a good thing. Okay. Because if you're doing sneaky, weird stuff, that's kind of gross. And we've all been doing some stuff that isn't necessarily sneaky and gross. You're not sneaky and gross, but we didn't really know how to disclose or that we should, or maybe we just didn't even think about it. Maybe like some of you guys, you may not even know that you're tracking some of this stuff or what the implications of things like Google Analytics on your site or the Facebook pixel on your site. You may not have any idea what the implications of that are, or even people leaving comments on your blog. So that's the thing I like about all of this talk. And I do believe it's going to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. This is not going away. It's not the end of the world. People are comparing it to like Y2K. And in some ways it's like that, because it's like, yeah, the world's not going to end, right? We're all going to get all frenzied up, but it's not going to end. But it is going to have an impact. And I think we're only going to hear more about data, only see more regulations. And so it would be better for you guys to be on the front end of this, where you're like, yeah, I got that. I got my policy down. I know what data I'm tracking, and I'm being very upfront about it. I'm not being smarmy, because I think it isn't smarmy if we don't know. But once we know what we should be doing, then we need to do it. And there are some places where I may make some other choices that are maybe not fully in line with some of the things that like the EU experts on GDPR are recommending, but that's kind of another story down the line. And I'll talk about that when we get to GDPR. But let's talk about data. So it's the most precious commodity, more than oil. We're going to hear about it a lot more and more, and it doesn't have to be bad. It's us being upfront and honest about what's going on our site. And if we're going to be upfront and honest, we kind of have to know what's going on. So let's talk about that. When you have a website, and we're going to start talking about sites, email will come later. When you have a website, if you have things like Google Analytics installed, that is tracking things. If you are working with Google ads, you have those in your site. Those are tracking things. If you're working with another ad partner, likely those are tracking things. If you have the Facebook pixel installed on your site, that is tracking something. And, we've heard all these things, like for years, bloggers are like, hey, put Google Analytics on your site. Here's how you do it. Put the Facebook pixel, which is something you get in the Facebook ads manager, and you just copy and paste a little bit of code into the header of your blog. And then you can target people on ads. You can go to Facebook and create an ad targeting people who have visited your site, and Facebook is collecting that data. That sounds really well and cool. It's a very neat feature. But when you really think about it, what that means is that when my mom, hey mom, you're going to get a lot of play in today's episode. When my mom comes to my website, Facebook is tracking her. It's storing data. I may or may not use it, but Facebook has access to that and may use it in some other way. Doesn't that sound a little creepy? Like, I don't think I really fully thought about the implications of that. I just heard a podcast or, went through a training, put the Facebook pixel on your site, then you can do retargeting ads and all of these other things, or create a lookalike audience based off of people who visit your website. All these cool tricks that I've used, but you don't really think about, like, where's that data going and what is Facebook doing with it? And that is really what has been going on in Congress this week. And I have not kept up because I can only do so much of this data, you guys. I can only do so much. You guys may be so sick of this already. You may be about to turn it off. Stick with me, I promise. But I couldn't listen to all of it. But in the memes and different videos and little things that people did share, the non-funny, like serious things people shared too, the questions weren't all dumb that Congress was asking. They're questions that a lot of us are not asking and maybe should be. And so I think, again, this is why this conversation is really important to have, and I'm glad we're having it. So when you have a website, if you're using any of those kinds of things, you're tracking stuff. If you have comments on your blog where people have to enter an email, your website is storing that somewhere. You may not even realize that, but it's stored in there. If you have forms that people can fill out, like contact forms or the plugin Gravity forms on your site, those things are all storing information. They're all storing people's personal data, names, email, maybe more, it just depends, locations, all kinds of things that we don't, like, I'm not a techie person, y'all. I'm not. And so all this is news to me, and I've been knee deep and I'm ready to just get out. So we're going to get out after this episode, I think. But so even though we kind of understand this as bloggers and maybe using some of these things, I don't think we fully understood. And that means that many of our visitors to our site, especially those, like if you have an audience, like I have an audience that's pretty savvy, for the most part, like a lot of you guys are tracking right with me. You know what these things are. Some of you guys are kind of in the middle, and there may be some newbies in here who just want to die. Don't die. Just stick around. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. But again, I'm reaching out to writers and bloggers. A lot of you guys have websites. A lot of you guys use the internet and tools like Facebook ads and things like that. So you're savvier than, the audience probably for my lifestyle blog, which is primarily like moms who have little kids. They may have no idea, because if I were not blogging, I can tell you that I would have no idea when I visited a website what was going on. And so that's important for us to share. So it's common stuff. It's happening everywhere. It's happening. Every site you go to is tracking something, almost every site. You just assume the site is. But it can be a little bit creepy when you really think about what is going on. Like when you, and I know this has happened so much, like you go and look at a pair of shoes on Amazon, and then you go to somebody's website and you're like, wow, gosh, these shoes just keep showing up everywhere. Yeah, that's not an accident. That's your data being tracked across the internet. And it is kind of creepy sometimes. And I think even more, we don't know some of the ways it's being tracked. Like people are suspecting like Alexa, your phone might be listening. Okay, now we're getting into the Twilight Zone, X-Files area. But I, have talked to people who have said, we had a conversation about this. I was texting someone about this particular like above ground pool. And the next thing I know, that above ground pool is showing up in my Google ads, even though I hadn't, or, like ads on websites, even though I hadn't searched for it online. So we don't know all the ways that data is being tracked. And I do think it's important that like we need to know, is Alexa listening and tracking that and sharing our information with Amazon? This is good to know. Is your Apple Watch tracking stuff? Okay, we need to know this. It's not all that X-Files because it's happening. Okay, so in short, to sum this up, there's some creepy stuff going on, some stuff we don't know about, and we don't want to be smarmy because it really can be smarmy. And now that we know, it's important to be upfront with the people visiting our sites. And important, again, we're not going to touch as much on email because I'm doing a training on that, and I'm going to talk more about that. It's going to be a free workshop this week if you're listening. And if you're listening in the future, I will have a replay or some kind of post or something that you can access. So again, go to the show notes, creativewriting.com/132, and you can find that whatever time period you're listening in. So we need to be paying attention to this. It is going to be more important, and it's going to help us not be smarmy and be upfront with our audience, but it is going to seem really creepy at first. So let me read to you. I just added, this is going to be one of the tips. We're moving into actually, no, I'll share it when I get to that tip, but I have a new banner that's on my site about cookies. And I'll read that to you because it's kind of creepy. So we are just all about being transparent. That's a good thing. I love transparency. I love it in disclosure. You can go back and listen to episode 33 where I talk about disclosure. I also have a post on Amazon disclosure, and also one specifically about big affiliate programs and how they don't disclose, because that really drives me nuts. I like to be transparent with people, but I think it's going to be a little creepy as we're transitioning because so many people are unaware that it now seems weird. Just like I think when we all realized that celebrities who were posting on Instagram about their favorite shirts and shoes and sodas were actually getting paid billions of dollars, probably not billions, but lots and lots of dollars to share that photo with us. It was kind of like a feeling. So I think that's going to be a little bit of what happens from now on as we move to a transition where people are going to start understanding, hey, my data is everywhere. Hey, I don't think I want my data everywhere. So we are going to be moving into a transition period with that. So here are some tips for what you can do right now, because GDPR, let's see if I can remember it now, the General Data Protection Regulation, I did have to look again, you guys. GDPR in the EU is the first big major shift in this happening. And some states have things that you're supposed to be doing. We should have been disclosing about cookies to the EU for a long time, but in the US, sometimes we ignore things like that. But this is a biggie, and there's some really big fines, and we don't know yet if they're going to actually come down hard on people in the US and somehow fine us. I'm like, I really, I want to comply, but I'm like, well, how are they going to find me? But we don't know yet. So May 25th is when it goes into place. And, I'm recording this is April something. I don't ever know what day it is, you guys, 23rd maybe. So we don't know what that's going to look like, but this is the impetus for a lot of people to start paying attention, and it's time to get your blog in order. Because if you have visitors, especially if you're in the EU, this is really massive for you because they absolutely can and will find you and find you. In the US, it's a little bit unclear to me what in the world they're going to do to me. I just don't know. And again, it's not about just not wanting to get a fine, but you don't want to get a fine. It's about wanting to be transparent. And since this is the direction we're moving in, we want to be transparent. I think I've said that enough. So we're going to talk about tips today for how you can comply with the GDPR. Now, I'm not going to fully go into what the GDPR is because I wrote a massive post, like an FAQs, and you can actually find that. I'll link to it in the show notes, but also if you just want to hop over there and be like, what are you talking about? You can find it at creativewriting.com/GDPR. And I have a big post about that there, but it's essentially asking us to disclose and get consent from our website visitors, our email subscribers. And that's really simplifying it, but that's essentially what it boils down to, is getting that consent and being transparent and clear with the average user about what is happening with their data, what we're doing with it. And then it's calling people into account and having accountability. So the bigger companies, they're going to have to actually hire a data processor, someone who handles this. You need to be responsible for things like breaches of security and notifying people. There's a lot of really sticky stuff. But if you're using like for email, for example, that's where a lot of this is really impactful. And if you're using a stand-up service provider, I've seen MailChimp talk about this and MailerLite talk about this, and ConvertKit's who I use and recommend, and they're doing some great stuff for GDPR, but you need to be able to comply. So with our website, here are a couple tips of what you need to do to get compliant. So the first thing is I'm going to recommend a plugin. It's called, I believe, GDPR Compliance, and I will link to it in the show notes. And if you Google it, you'll probably find it. Everybody's downloading it. But what it's going to do is it's going to add a checkbox to your comment area, but also to your anywhere you have like forms, like Gravity forms or contact forms. I have forms on my site or on the page for coaching where I work with people. So if people are interested in maybe working with me, I have them fill out just a little thing of what they're interested in, and it shoots me an email. So those little checkboxes are allowing for people to actually consent. Like I consent to my email being here, and that's just being upfront with them. And that helps with that data that we didn't really know we were storing on our websites. And so that's a really great plugin. It does not fully help you comply, but it helps you comply in the area of comments specifically and forums. Now, you also should have a privacy policy. And I did have one, but I realized I wasn't linking to it anywhere on my site. So like you couldn't really find it. It was like hidden. And so I took care of that. I actually added it to a menu in the footer, which is where the kind of boring stuff goes. I actually named my menu down there boring, the boring menu. And the privacy policy is there. You may, this is the time where you need to kind of get serious about that and maybe look at some businesses. If you don't want to pay for one, which if you want to pay for one and just know that you're safe, I highly recommend Business Ease, and I'll link to them in the show notes as well. I'm an affiliate, so I probably will leave an affiliate link and disclose it because we're not smarmy and we disclose things. They have a great privacy policy, and it can be worth it because that is what is going to protect you in a lot of ways if there is an issue with your site. And if you're a tiny blogger or someone who's like, no one ever goes to my site, it might be fine. But if it's not, it's good to have that there. So I updated my privacy policy, and I made sure it's visible on that front page. Now, another thing you're going to have to do in all your forms for email sign up is link in that form to your privacy policy. And so it's really important that you get one and that you have it visible on your site where people can find it. And then you're going to have to start adding that to your forms, like just linking to, read our privacy policy here and linking to that. The next thing you're going to want to do is, and this is where I'll read to you my new thing that I have a little banner, and actually on my WordPress site, I don't know if this came with like the theme or if it was just in there, but if you go to appearance and then widgets, one of the things that you can add is like the EU cookie banner is what it was called in mine. And I added it to the footer and it pops up at the bottom. So I'm going to read to you what it is or what it says. And I actually took this from another site where they had the language that was compliant with the GDPR. So it says, I use cookies on this site to personalize content and ads, to provide social media features, and to analyze traffic. And I just realized I left out the Oxford comma. So we're going to go back and add the Oxford comma there. I also share information about your use of our site with our social media advertising and analytics partners who may combine it with other information that you've provided to them or that they've collected from your use of their services. Read full policy. So I link to the privacy policy and then you can close and accept. Now, that sounds pretty creepy, right? So this is where I think that this transition period where people are becoming aware of what's happening with their data, going to be a little rocky. People might be a little bit freaked out. I'm not sure, because I know when I heard this, part of me is like, whatever, everybody's tracking everything. I just don't care. And the other part of me is like, hold on a second. This is a little bit insane how much information about me is stored in Facebook and other places. And if I'm going to your blog, more of that is happening. And that's a little bit crazy. So just know that there may be people who are weirded out by that and that don't want to have the cookies. And that just may impact things like maybe it's going to impact things that show up on your blog, like the ads that show up and things like that. I don't know how fully, it depends probably what you have going on your site, how fully that might affect the user experience. But overall on my site, I don't think it's going to create a problem if people don't want to do it. And actually, here's the thing. I got this banner as a widget, but does this work? What does this actually do? What if they don't close it and it just stays open? I don't know. Okay. Again, I'm not the techie person and I'm doing my best to comply and trying to help you guys find solutions. So that's what I have going on right now. And that was in my WordPress site. I also found something called CookieBot, which is a plugin where they have a much more full and robust cookie policy. And I'm not sure that much robustness that they have is required fully to comply with GDPR. So I'm not interested. It has a bunch of checkboxes and all kinds of things. I don't know that that's fully necessary or if this is okay right now. A lot of this stuff, you guys, is still it's new. So like I said, rocky transition, new, we're going to see how it all shakes down. So you do want some kind of banner or overlay on your site that talks about the fact that you have cookies and all that. And then you have to link to your disclosure page or privacy page where you talk more about what that exactly means. So you need to tell people, I'm using Google Analytics to track data. I'm using the Facebook pixel that's in the header of my site to track information. So those things are really important. So that's the next thing, is to have kind of that banner going on there. I would also recommend, again, because I've said I'm not really going to touch too much on email here, but email's huge and there are going to be some big changes. I really would love for you guys to join me for the free training that I'm doing. I'm not selling anything, so it's just a free workshop. And you can go to creativewriting.com/GDPR free to sign up for that. And it's going to be focused solely on freebies, which is one of the main ways people use to grow their site. Freebies, lead magnets, reader magnets. A lot of this may change, like big time change with GDPR. And it depends who you ask. People in the US are a little bit more loosey-goosey about it. But when I'm talking to lawyers and experts and people in the EU and the UK, it's a big deal, some of the changes. So we're going to talk about that in the training. But to start with, look at the third-party people you're using and your providers for things like email. Go to ConvertKit's site and they have a whole lot of stuff. If you're in their Facebook group, the ConvertKit family, we have their links in there about GDPR and what they're doing. Email your company if you're not sure. This is the time where if you're using a company no one's ever heard of because it's free, stop. I had someone email me this week and I feel so sad. And if you're listening, I'm so sorry. But she was finding that the company that she used, just because of all this GDPR stuff, she lost an enormous amount of subscribers because they wanted consent in a way that she couldn't provide. And she is in the EU. And so this was a huge deal and it's big. So you want to be using, whereas if she had used ConvertKit, what I did is I was able to actually they automatically segmented EU subscribers. And, it's not going to be perfect, but the best that it can be done to track the IPs and everything else of people in the EU, I was able to email them, say, hey, I need your consent because of GDPR. Here is a link you can go to offer your consent or not, or go ahead and unsubscribe. And I can go back in there, and anyone who hasn't clicked those things, I can delete them. And that's what I'm going to do because they haven't given me consent and I don't want to be fined. But so if you're not using a big provider that's actually going to help take care of you, this is the time to get serious about that. Use trustworthy providers. The ones I recommend most highly, ConvertKit's my favorite, but not everybody needs that, okay? I do a lot of things with email, so I need a robust performer. MailerLite has a lot of great features. I have used both. I will say, whatever one you use first, a lot of times you get used to that one. But there are some things that ConvertKit can do that MailerLite just doesn't, or not as sophisticatedly, if that's just not a word, but they're just not as sophisticated. It's a little clunkier, still very, very good, especially for the price. MailChimp is fine. They're trustworthy. They're not my favorite, but they're trustworthy. And then Mad Mimi is great. I really like them. I think it's really the user experience, unless you're super used to it, is really annoying. I did write a post last week comparing the email service providers, and I also talk about it in my book, Email Lists Made Easy for Writers and Bloggers. So just in short, make sure you're using someone trustworthy because they're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And you want to know that they have your back and they're doing the things they need to do to help you comply when it comes to email. So these are the things that we've talked about so far that you need to go and do. Get the GDPR compliance free plugin to get your forms with those checkboxes and consent. You want to update your privacy policy. You want to figure out how you can alert people coming to your site that you use cookies. And then you want to look at your providers because you're going to have to be doing stuff with email and updating that. So you want to look at who you're using, make sure they're trustworthy. And if you're thinking about switching or on the fence, this is the time. And you guys know I'm make no bones about this, that I'm an affiliate for ConvertKit, not only because they have a fantastic affiliate program, but because I really do honestly believe in them and just highly recommend them for people who are doing more robust things. And the way they've handled the GDPR switch is one of those reasons that I just love this company so much. So if you do want to try them, I have an affiliate link where you get 30 days free to try them out. You can go to creativewriting.com/ConvertKit. I'll also link to that in the show notes because I have some bonuses. So if you sign up for that free month, email me, KirstenOliphant@gmail.com. Email me and let me know so I can get you into some of those freebies that I have. The way the affiliate program is set up, it's really clunky to go find you. Like they don't email me directly. Anyway, it's their third party that they're using that does a bad job of that. So I have to go manually and I'm bad about manual stuff, you guys. So just email me and tell me you signed up. But just use somebody trustworthy and then come to my free training on freebies, creativewriting.com/GDPR free, because we're going to talk about these specifics and look at your website and the different things that you have and talk about things like what if you're using lead pages? What if you're using MailMunch? What if you're using IFTTT or Zapier to connect all these things together? What does that mean for you and getting consent? Can you have someone sign up for a freebie and then add them to your email list? All these things are really important and we're going to talk about them then. Okay. Was this fun? I don't know if it was. I'm like, please still be listening. Please still be listening. I do think this stuff's important. I hope I didn't wax on too much about it. I hope that instead you guys are left with the sense of a couple things. One, understanding more about data, the significance and why it's good that we're being transparent. And then also with a few concrete things that you can do, whether you're doing it because you want to comply with GDPR or because you want to be more transparent with your readers, either way, I'm good with that. Okay. Because if we're not being smarmy, that means we are disclosing and being upfront, honest, and transparent with our people about what we're doing. I think that's a good thing. Now, do I like all the specifics of GDPR? No, I think it's revealed my very American attitude, I think, in looking at this very British piece of legislature. So that's a whole other side of things. But I am excited. If you're still listening and you listen to the whole thing, please send me a message that says Sasquatch. Just shoot me an email, KirstenOliphant@gmail.com, and I will give you something. I'll decide what tomorrow. But just shoot me an email if you listen to this whole thing and I will give you a prize because again, this is a doozy. It's important. It's nerdy, deep in the weeds. And I'm going to end now. If you want to find all the links, if you're like, there's so many links and I'm driving my car, because that's how I listen to podcasts, just go to creativewriting.com/132. Just remember 132. 132. That's the episode number. That's where you'll find the show notes, and I'll have links galore so that if you were driving your car, you can find them later. Whew. I think I talked really fast. So sorry. So sorry. I'm going to close out this episode the way I always do. And this week, I feel like I've given you a lot of like really data-y things to do, but I still want you to do this. I want you to go out and create content that you love and serve your people well.